Want to know what differentiates a good content creator from a great content creator? A fancy mic stand. We in the big leagues now. How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Killmark Collectors. As always, I'm Brandon, and thanks so much for joining me. This week is not going to be a tutorial or necessarily a gameplay video, but I wanted to talk about something that's been involved in the meta and that's been a little bit in the news recently. I think about a week ago, I saw a video from Sovereign over at Sovereign RPG who was talking about the Chinese test server. And those videos, coupled with the fact that in our war with the Fireflies Alliance, recently there were, I think, 2 citadels that we were able to kill without any resistance. And in the comments of the Reddit posts on those, people started saying, well, the Chinese test server, the Chinese server is going to be spun up, and, you know, there's no reason for them to defend it at this point. And that kind of got me thinking, and it made me a little sad, to be honest, because I don't want to see this community and this game kind of go by the wayside because the community itself is being split. Before I get too far into this, I do want to be very clear. This is a legal issue for Netease. In my day job, I am a IT cybersecurity consultant, and I deal with and have helped companies navigate the Chinese laws and requirements. And they are very, very burdensome. So I think that if the game is going to continue, Netease is going to have to split out the servers. I just don't technically see a way around that at this point. Where this leaves us is with a divided community. And the problem here is that, at least for me, I see a big drop in the player density and some of the content that's created for this game. As much as I would love to say that it's fine for us to just keep plopping down citadels and continuing on our merry way, at the end of the day, we're here to have fun with this. And that's going to be very difficult to do if there aren't enough players in the game for us to fight and to interact with. I don't have access to the devs. This is just me lying awake in bed at night and not being able to sleep, and my brain is going a million miles an hour. And I think that what needs to happen here is that New Eden needs to burn. Now, what I mean by that is not that the game needs to just completely be destructed, but rather that we have an in-game event like an invasion or something just dramatic that would help give an impetus to condense the player base a little bit. I think that based off of what I'm guessing and kind of I'm brainstorming, I think you would need to close about 25 to 30% of the total map, which will be very impactful for a lot of players. If you look right now, there are a couple of major alliances that are spread out throughout New Eden. And while I don't think that we necessarily need all of us to be fighting at all times, it is obviously just a content issue. So what would this actually look like? Well, I think that what would be really interesting is if Netease announced that, you know, starting in August or whatever, we're going to have some sort of invasion. Maybe it's the Blood Raiders, maybe it's whatever. We can fit it in with the lore of Eve, and honestly, I think it would be kind of cool if they did come up with some new big bad guy. But some big bad guy is coming in and is basically invading and taking over large sections of null space and condensing the player base so that we're forcing people into conflict. Now, there's obviously a lot that would have to go into this, but I've come up with a list of some of the problems that I see and possible solutions. And what I'd like to do is to have kind of a dialogue here with you and say, what do you think about this idea? Would it work? What were some of the other things that you would see? And let me know down in the comments below if you think that this is viable or if you think that I'm completely off my rocker, which is more likely than not the case. Let's start with some of the problems with this, and then we'll talk about some of the ways that I think that Netease might be able to actually fix some of these and address some of these. The first and foremost problem is that we're going to need a big bad. And unfortunately, that does take a lot of development effort. And so that will be kind of number one up on the list. How are we going to do this? And how are we going to do it in a way that we're not just shutting down servers and shutting down access to systems? Number two is that if we take the map it would be very easy to disproportionately impact certain regions and players. This likely would come at the very fringes, which are typically the higher or the lower nullsec areas, lower security ratings, and so we would end up with fewer and low sec areas, fewer low rated security areas. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Anyways, less lucrative areas for us to rat and mine in. Number 3 is just the actual logistics of moving everybody. Now, from a player's perspective and from a Citadel or a station perspective, people have invested billions and billions of ISK. So there has to be a way for people to move their assets out of those systems that might be closed down and be able to actually reposition themselves in a way that they can continue to enjoy the game and they're not just going to quit. And then number 4 is actually, once we have seen some growth in the game, being able to reopen these areas in an intentional and thoughtful way that creates content and again provides for the community. Like I said, I don't want to just throw problems here, so let's talk about some solutions. So for one, we need a big bad, and we need to do it relatively inexpensively. Take Concord, they reskin those guys, and they basically just throw them out there into nullsec as existing or as the new bad guys. If you look at like the rattlesnake versus the scorpion, they're very, very similar. So there is some precedent for this already. It would basically allow Netease to copy and paste a lot of the ships, the models, the mechanics, all of that. And then they could basically make it so that there was just a permanent gate camp that the minute you jumped in, you have the same mechanics as like high sec. If you're a pirate, your warp drive gets disabled, you're instantly given a criminal timer, and then the big bad guys just blow you the crap up. Very quickly, people would realize that they can't get into these systems. Netease could essentially shut those down. They'd save on some commuting costs, and they would still have a formidable opponent that is explaining why these systems are closed. Now, number 2 is the equitable closing of these systems and making sure that they're not just taking, for example, all of the territory that the Silent Alliance has established sovereignty or whatever we want to call it, pulling just those and leaving everything in the south. Now, I think this would be pretty easy to do. We would look at the security ratings. Probably the systems that are currently at -1 would be the first to go, and then they would slowly step their way in. Now, that being said, I think that because you have this invasion, you have a reason and an in-game reason to actually up the security or down to whatever to make it less secure. I'm clearly struggling here. To make the systems less secure as you move further in towards the core and establish more areas that could be used then to do lucrative ratting, increase base size, condensed belts, all of those things. You'd be able to have more of that closer into the core worlds. That then brings us to how do we make sure that people have their stuff that isn't stuck out in a system that is being closed. Well, again, I think there's precedent for this. When a station blows up today, all of your crap is transported to the nearest ITC. You're able to unlock that for a certain amount of money, and then you can continue on your merry way. I think that Netease would be able to very easily do something similar. They could offer a Concord evacuation or something that would allow us to basically transport all of our goods to a ITC or something, or a station of our choosing, and then we would be able to go from there. Now, this does get a little bit more nuanced when we talk about stations. There are mechanics for unanchoring and being able to move stations. Netease may need to beef those up a little bit, but overall, I think that it would actually be a really interesting couple of weeks if you started having alliances moving their stations further into the core, so that you would be able to stay ahead of the invasion path, basically. With that, I think there would also need to be a lot of communication. This is something, unfortunately, that Netease has struggled with, but I think with something of this magnitude, it would absolutely be critical that they are very clear on what systems are being closed, when they are being closed, and what the new systems and the new security setting or the new security ratings for those systems will be. And the final thing is going to be, we don't want to leave this universe closed forever. We do want to see all of New Eden open again for players to go and explore. So how would we do this? And I think that there are a lot of other games that have set community goals of, a certain number of PC enemies are killed, or there are certain metrics, whatever that is. I think that Netease could, again, kind of look at the back end and see how many players they have, what they want the player density to be. And then as we get closer, maybe you could start including things like special anomalies, like they did with the Halloween anomalies, where we say, okay, there needs to be 5,000 special anomalies cleared in order to open this next region, or whatever it is. And so you could have things kind of building. And again, I think it would be really interesting from an alliance perspective, because depending on how NetEase wants to do this, you could make it so that clearing in a specific region opens systems in that region. So you have alliances like us in the Silent Federation, where we are actually going and trying to actively clear this stuff because it's an alliance benefit for us to get more and more territory open to us. So that's it, guys. Like I said, I'm really curious to hear what you think. Is this a good idea? Is this something that you think NetEase should take a look at? Am I completely just crazy? Again, entirely possible. It's happened before. But either way, leave me a comment down below. I really want to engage in kind of a fun discourse here. I think it's, again, kind of a thought experiment, but a fun thought experiment. So hopefully we're able to have some fun with this. And thanks so much for joining. If you want to join in on more conversations like this, head on over to the Discord link down below. You can apply to join the Pandemic Corporation through our Discord channel. We do have a lot of these type of meta discussions and just general state of the game. So if you're enjoying this, be sure to head over there and check it out as well. As always, if you would do me a favor, give me a like. Hopefully, maybe it'll help the devs see it. I don't know. But also, it'll just help other folks find the channel. And then if you haven't already, hit subscribe. Make sure you ding the little notification bell so that you're notified when I drop a next video. And until next time, fly safe.